Good afternoon to all. Respected learned professors and guests, it's my immense pleasure to be part of this FTP and send a very outstanding warm welcome to all of you. On behalf of Sindhi Research Forum of VHNSN College, joining with Dayananda Sagar Group of Institutions and Pearl, a Foundation for Educational Research, proudly organizes the 5-day FTP on Agriculture, Environment and Climate Exchange. Pandemic COVID-19 changes the entire world environment and its economic crisis. The coronavirus lockdowns have changed the way the earth moves. Researchers who study the earth's movements are also reporting a drop in seismic noise because of changes in human activity. This FDP undoubtedly creates the awareness in human activities towards the environment and describes the changes in agriculture and climate exchange. The destruction of nature makes the humanity increasingly vulnerable to disease outbreaks. Let me start the program with welcome letters. Small cheer and great welcome makes a merry feast. I will be great honor to welcome our beloved principal, Captain Dr. P. Sundarpandian sir, who sees the opportunities in every aspect and brings the best to one. He is having a great leadership skill and doing the right things. He has been deliberated with a prestigious Doctor of Arts in Commerce and got many degrees in Arts and Management. He is the member in NACP team. He has received Best Teacher State Award and Best NSSPO National Award and received many grants. He has 30 years of teaching experience and also 25 years of research experience. I am very grateful to welcome and learned Professor Dr. P. Sundarpandian sir to deliver the welcome address. Sir, please.
A very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us in the 5-day faculty development program on agriculture, environment, and climate change. Happy and delighted to conduct this webinar jointly with Pearl Foundation, the Foundation for Educational Excellence, Bangalore. At this juncture, I welcome Professor Dr. Sanjay Deshmukh, former Vice Chancellor, Mumbai University, eminent scientist, Professor M.S. Swaminathan Research Foundation, Chennai, and Professor of Life Sciences, Mumbai University, Mumbai, who have consented to deliver the inaugural address. I deem it a privilege in welcoming Dr. K. Muthuchilian, former Vice Chancellor, Periyar University, Salem, Tamil Nadu, and Pro Vice Chancellor, Dayananda Sagar University, Bangalore, for showing his cooperation in jointly collaborating with us and being a part of us to deliver the presidential address. It is known that man, due to his need and greed, has done many activities that not only harm the environment but himself do. Many plant and animal species go extinct due to human activity. Climate change is one of the most defining concerns of today's world and has greatly reshaped or in process of altering the Earth's ecosystems. As per estimates, this rise is expected to be 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2050 or maybe even more. Deforestation is also occurring. CHG emission is increasing and soil, water bodies and air are being polluted. It's also worth noting that world population is expected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, which would magnify the pressure on agriculture land to meet the growing food demands already affected by the impact of climate change. According to global assessment of land degradation and improvement, a quarter of land area around the globe can now be marked as degraded. FAO reports that rise in world hunger level is constantly increasing since 2014. These reports establishes the fact that achieving the target of sustainable development goals by 2030 to eradicate hunger is still difficult to achieve. As per Food and Agricultural Organization data published in 2016, if the current situation of GHG emissions and climate change continue, then by the year 2100, there will be decline in the production of major cereal crops, 20 to 45% in maize fields, 5 to 50% wheat, and 20 to 30% rice. Hence, if the trends continue, In very near future, crop losses may increase at an unprecedented rate, which will substantially contribute to reduce production, spike to food prices, and it will become difficult to cope up with rising needs of growing population. If you do not do anything and things continue to go on like right now, then a day in future will come when humans will become extinct from the surface of the earth. It is a high time that we prepare ourselves for the upcoming challenges so as to combat the impact of climate change and ensure food security not only for humans but other living beings as well. It is also the endeavor of this webinar, Agriculture, Environment and Climate Change, to pour more insights on horticulture, global environmental threats, plant breeding, disaster management, trends in agriculture, biotechnology, environmental factors, industrial agroforestry, water resources, biodiversity, and global climate change. This webinar will also report us the green strategies to combat climate change and enhance agri production through sustainable methods. At the outset, I would like to welcome all the intellectual resource person, Dr. T. Arumugam, Professor Avinash Kaur, Dr. Geeta, Dr. Adas Bal, Dr. S. Mohan Kumar, Dr. Manula Banurni, Dr. Parthiban, Dr. S. Ravichandran, Dr. K. Muthuchelian, and Dr. V. Kida Lakshmi, who accepted our invitation to share their valuable thoughts on the field of agriculture, environment, and climate change. I welcome and appreciate the efforts taken by the coordinators, Dr. N. Jaykumaran, Dean Research, Mrs. Uma Sundari, Secretary, PAL Foundation, and the organizing committee members for the 5-day faculty development program on agriculture, environment, and climate change. Once again, I welcome all our faculty development program. Best wishes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful welcome speech. It always seems impossible when it is done. It's my privilege to welcome Professor Dr. Sanjay Deshmukh, sir, former Vice Chancellor of Mumbai University. He is one of India's widely acknowledged life scientists, as also academic thought leaders in higher education. Currently, he is the Professor of Life Sciences at Mumbai University. His contribution towards R&D is field-level research experience at national and international levels spanning over 50 countries. He was pioneering work on mangrove ecosystems of the world, led to establishment of a global network of mangrove genetic resources, conservation centers. Also developed people-centered hotspots strategy for conservation planning through extensive first-hand study on sacred groves in Maharashtra state. He is the only faculty of the university who is recognized PhD guide in 5 subjects. He has proven track record in resource mobilization and having a great leadership potential. He led Mumbai University as NAP coordinator, which was re-accredited as Grade A University. He had received Best Village Department Development Award in NGO category, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of Maharashtra, November 2010, and Best Village Industries Development Project Award in 2009, and Ministry of MSMI GOI of the 4 Best Food Processing Units by NGOs in India, August 2009. It's my great honor to invite Professor Sanjay Deshmukh, sir, to deliver the inaugural address. For the event to be started, sir, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sanjay Deshmukh from University of Mumbai, and I would like to profusely thank the Nadar College for kindly inviting me to participate in this faculty development program, which deals with the overall gamut of environment, development, agriculture, and climate change. My specific gratitude I would like to express to Dr. Muthuchelian for kindly inviting me to participate in this program. And besides that, the honorable principal of this college, the members of the management council, as well as the organizing committee of this faculty development program, in addition to the faculty members who are participating in this program and other delegates. This is a wonderful occasion for us to share with each other the experiences that we have gained out of our long-standing professional career in the field of academics as well as in the research field. This college, which is autonomous, has been on the map of the Indian higher education. And from Dr. Muthuchelian, I have been hearing a lot about the progress that it has made and the impact it has made in the field of higher education. And therefore, it's a privilege for me to be with all of you and share some of my experiences with regard to the research that I have undertaken in these areas, particularly environment, agriculture, and also climate change. I was very fortunate to start my professional career in Tamil Nadu at MS Swaminathan Research Foundation as early as 30 years ago. And after spending 5 years, I came back to Mumbai and continued with a few NGOs for 10 years before getting into the University of Mumbai as a professor. It is therefore the varied and diversified experience that I have undergone has given me an opportunity to apply my research at the grassroots level. Today's topic, which is very relevant to the current scenario of global environmental crisis, as well as the global pandemic, which is basically surmounting all the activities, physical and also intellectual, which is affecting the economy of the entire world. And therefore, in this scenario, how do we look at the entire gamut of environment, agriculture, and climate change? That is what is the theme of this particular faculty development program. I would like to profusely apologize for the initial hiccup where I could not open the slideshow properly and it was not seen as a full screen, because of which I had to send the email and the presentation to the organizers. But nevertheless, I would like to give full justice to the expectations that all the faculty members as well as the audience has from this particular faculty development program's inaugural session. Dear colleagues and delegates, as all of us know, we have been only one of the species of 1.7 million species on the planet. And when we talk about biological diversity, the environment comes first. May I have the next slide, please? And therefore, the sequence of theme of this faculty development program, though it starts with agriculture, which is an integral part of almost 60% of our country's communities, I would like to start with environment because it encompasses agriculture and also the crisis of environment are directly relating to the climate change that all of us have been experiencing for the last 2 decades. This particular highlight of slide is basically 3 events which I am just briefly trying to highlight. One is in 1972, then in 1992, and the third one in 2012. Our former Prime Minister, the late Dr. Mrs. Indira Gandhi, first voiced the concern about the ever-increasing population and how it is relating to poverty, and the poverty, how it is relating to the degradation of environment. While saying so, she was very clear about the problems that the world is going to face in future, and she reiterated that unless we look at the control of population, we will not be in a position to prevent environmental degradation and also the economies of the nations, which along with their GDPs, they basically would like to show that they are economically better than the other nations. And therefore, 20 years after that, in 1992, when the United Nations organized the first conference on environment and development, there was a basis of the previous 20 years of Stockholm Conference, where Mrs. Indira Gandhi had voiced the concern of environment. Sure enough, in 1992 conference, there was an agenda decided for the entire world for the 21st century, which we all know as Agenda 21. And the review of that Agenda 21 document was done in 2012, again in Rio de Janeiro, where the United Nations Conference on Human Development was organized. May I have the next slide? As all of us know, biodiversity is a conglomeration of diversity at species level, diversity of genetic level, and also diversity at community level or ecosystems level. And therefore, when we are talking about biological diversity, and when we look at the entire planet as a whole, which is a kind of repository of biological diversity, it is very interesting to note that there are only 17 mega diversity rich countries out of about 250 plus countries that we all have on this planet. And these countries are actually occupying only less than 10% of the surface area of the planet, but they support more than 70% of the world's biological resources. All of us are aware that the estimated number of total biological resources on our planet is only 1.7 million. I'm talking about the actual number, but it is estimated that it is somewhere near 11.3 million species, which we have not yet been able to explore and also identify. The new species which are annually described as per the current rate is about 18,000 species per year. And despite new identifications that we are adding in terms of number, the threatened species on our planet is about 17,000 species. It is therefore, based on various theories, estimated that the total loss of species or the current rate of extinction because of the human pressure on the environment is estimated as 1,000 times greater than the natural rate of extinction. And the predicted species loss during the next 100 years because of the anthropogenic activities is estimated to be anywhere about 20 to 50% of the species that we are going to lose in the next 100 years or so. Next slide, please. When we are talking about biological resources and their conservation, the first thing comes to our mind is the forest resources. May I have the complete slide on the background so that I will be in a position to show the importance of forests to the audience. When we are talking about valuation of the forest, you can have one more click, please. Yeah. So the contribution of forests to the global biological diversity is enormous because whatever we notice on the above ground is supporting something below ground as well when we are talking about coastal and marine biological resources. This particular slide, I want to just highlight the contribution of forests to the global GDP of nations. And we are looking at per capita GDP where forests contribute 75%. In terms of employment, the forests contribute about 92%. In terms of export and forex, they contribute about 59%. Government revenues, the forests contribute 31% of the total GDP, whereas 46% of the total GDP is contributed by forests in terms of foreign investments. Next slide, please. In view of this particular scenario, if you are talking about conservation and sustainable management of natural resources and ultimately the environment, then we have to look at the traditional ways in which our communities were preserving our natural resources or biological diversity. As all of us know, the contribution of humans to the agricultural development of this globe is enormous, but agriculture is only 10,000 years old. And prior to that, human beings were hunters and gatherers. When they started colonizing in particular locations, that was only because they found approaches to domestication of wild varieties of certain species of plants. Today we call them as crops. And these resources, once planted, within 2 to 4 months' time, depending on the type of crops, one was able to generate production. And with that, they were able to stay in one location for longer durations. In addition to the domestication of wild varieties of crops, it was also imperative that they were able to identify various uses of each and every plant. And today we call them as medicinal plants. But the qualities of these plants in treating different ailments of human beings were long recognized. And that is how the resources from the forests were also preserved based on the traditional knowledge. This particular slide is only one example of the communities from Koraput region who have been able to successfully protect at least 900 different species of medicinal plants, even in the 21st century, when we are talking about the post-green revolution era, and we are still looking at dependency on the people's knowledge, traditionally, how we can really balance the environmental sustainability. Next slide, please. In view of this particular scenario, when we are talking about managing our environment, it will be very important for us to link science with society. And this particular slide is showing two activities. One is the activity by villagers, where they are documenting with the help of preparation of maps, the documentation of biological resources, and also abiotic resources, which are helping the people and helping the scientists. So what we call it as preparation of biodiversity register. And in the second slide, you can see the women particularly who are contributing to 70% of the agricultural activity of the world are showing them the techniques by which the sowing is conducted, and the scientists are in a position to document that. And there is a kind of mutual learning process where if you are able to link science with society, then environmental sustainability can also be achieved. May I have the next slide, please? This particular slide shows you the restoration of degraded coastal areas by way of involving the communities for large-scale plantation of mangroves. And this particular slide is a scene from Tamil Nadu, where with the help of Forest Department, for the first time 25 years before today, we were in a position to develop a concept at MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, which is called as the Joint Mangrove Management. We are all aware about the joint forest management, but the joint mangrove management was the word which was not only coined but also implemented by the forest department with the technical inputs by MS Swaminathan Foundation. And with the help of that, we were in a position to bring about 50,000 hectares of land along the east coast of India under the plantations of mangroves, which gave the livelihood security to the coastal communities. Next slide, please. The combination of environment, agriculture, and climate change starts with this particular slide, where I'm talking about the green revolution that our country witnessed in the decade of 1960s. It was basically a symphony, which was like a combination of political will by the then agriculture minister Shri C. Subramaniam, the financial will by the finance secretary to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Bhutalingam, and the scientific will, which was led by none other than Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, who is one of the greatest ever human scientists of the world. And with his contribution, Asian countries witnessed what we call today as Green Revolution. In fact, it is very interesting to know that the 4,000 years before 1965, the total agricultural production of India was less than the 4 years in which, during 1965 and 1969, India achieved the productivity gains in only 4 years. So that is how the impact of Green Revolution was there. Next slide, please. However, 5 decades thereafter, as Dr. Swaminathan had envisioned in 1970 during his presidential address of Indian Science Congress in Varanasi, he had talked about evergreen revolution and the combination of ecological security, economic efficiency, and social equity were the 3 components that he envisaged for achieving evergreen revolution. And he said that we will have to achieve sustainability in family farming. The key points that I am highlighting in this slide is basically the environmental sustainability that we are talking about as one key component. And this particularly is very valid for Indian scenario, where this environmental sustainability can be obtained by helping the family farms to conserve and ensure the sustainable use of natural resources on their farms, that is water, land, and biodiversity. And in this way, the research must focus on enhancing water availability, water productivity, and water use efficiency, building soil productivity, fertility, and combating land degradation and conserving biodiversity through sustainable use. The next slide shows you how to achieve environmental sustainability in addition to social sustainability. Can I have the next slide, please? The social sustainability precedes the economical sustainability, which is highlighted in this particular slide, and it shows following components. That is, we'll have to have higher productivity, we'll have to create more job opportunities, we'll have to produce high value crops, we'll have to produce added value products, we'll also have to reduce production costs, we'll have to improve post harvest handling. While linking the farmers to markets, we will have to provide opportunities for microcredit to small enterprises. This is the concept of integrated intensive farming systems, which was promoted by FAO based on the guidelines that were developed during my association with MS Swaminathan Foundation. And the foundation provided guidelines of these three types: economics, and also social equity. Next slide, please. The social sustainability can be achieved by generating more employment opportunities for family farming members. We should also empower women and strive for social equity. We should attract youth to agriculture by making agriculture an attractive proposition, and also intellectually challenging and economically rewarding. We should also improve the infrastructure of rural areas and provide institutional services. And last but not the least, we should also improve livelihoods. And the combination of ecological security and economic efficiency can definitely lead us to social security. Next slide, please. In this way, a kind of paradigm diagram of sustainable agriculture as well as sustainable human development can be seen from this particular slide, where the sustainable natural resources management and inputs is one angle of the three-pronged strategy. The second angle is crop and livestock genetic improvement. And the third is socio-economic and policy as well as institutional support. With these three components, we can achieve what we call it as agriculture and rural development. Now we have looked at two aspects of this theme of the faculty development program, that is environment and also agriculture. Now I am taking you to the third component of this particular presentation, which deals with climate change. May I have the next slide, please? The climate change, as all of us know, is happening. But in the mid-80s, before the establishment of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it was Dr. Swaminathan who in 1986 promoted and introduced the concept of climate change and the sea level rise or global warming. The global warming will lead to the sea level rise, and those nations which are just above sea level by about 1 meter or so will have experienced submersions due to the seawater by the changes in the sea level or the rise in sea level. This is one example where the satellite image of Mumbai Island is shown in this particular slide. And Mumbai Island is hardly 604 square kilometer, but it supports the population more than Australia, which is about 25 million in numbers. And about 22% of Mumbai's geographical area is below the level of 1 meter. So if the sea level rise takes place to the tune of 1 meter, then at least 25% of Mumbai's population will have to be evacuated. And a loss worth 75,000 crores will be accrued due to the submergence of Mumbai Island, which is going to be 22% of its area by the changes in sea level. So this is a kind of threat to the ecological security of just a major city like Mumbai. But there are several nations, including Indonesia and our island areas of Maldives, which are hardly 1 meter above the sea level. You can look at, I'm sorry, not Maldives, it is Lakshadweep. And a country like Maldives, which is also 1 meter above sea level, has a direct threat of submergence if just about 1 meter sea level rise takes place. Next slide, please. And what will happen if we are not going to look at the solutions to the sea level rise? Today, if you look at the freshwater supply to the entire world, then 97.2% of the water of our planet is in the form of salt water. And only 2% or 2.5% of the water is in the form of fresh water. But out of that, only 0.3% of fresh water is available for use for the human beings. And therefore, the shortage of water, the intrusion of salt water on the land areas, and increasing density in the coastal areas are going to be the major problems when we are talking about sea level rise or global warming. Next slide, please. And therefore, when we are talking about where will it lead, what will be the consequences of changes in sea level or global warming, then there are 10 points that I have tried to highlight. Uh, Point number one is shoreline erosion and threat to the coastal communities by flooding, damage to coastal wetlands, that is mangroves and marshes, devastation of coral reefs, stress on the marine fisheries, loss of habitat at the land, as well as the loss of local biodiversity. Next slide, please. Further problems or threats due to the sea level rise or global warming would be saltwater intrusion, leading to groundwater and soil contamination, then changes in salinity and temperature regimes, loss of critically endangered native species due to loss of habitats, and lastly, the disturbance to the food cycle as well as redistribution of energy, thus costing economic loss to coastal zones. Dear friends, we can look at agriculture as one example of changes of temperature and how they are going to lead to the loss of productivity in agriculture. You can consider the room in which you are sitting. The temperature there might be about 27, 28 degrees Celsius. If it is air conditioned room, it may be 22, 23 degrees. You walk out of that room, the temperature would be 32, 33 degrees. You go in the outskirts of the building, it may be 37, 38 degrees. And in the open areas, it may be 42 degrees. But in the agricultural farms, when the farming is practiced, and at the time of pollination, the farmer cannot make out what is the slightest change that is going to take place because of the global warming. And if that change is hardly 1%, may I have the next slide, please? In the crop like wheat, the physiological changes take place at the time of pollination. And if there is a change in just 1 degree Celsius, then the total productivity levels of the entire crop will be reduced by 22%. And this reduction will be due to the maturity of seeds at little earlier stage than its normal stage of maturity. Maybe around 10 days earlier they will mature. And because of that, the size of the grains also will be less. And subsequently, the weight of the grain will be less. And therefore, the productivity loss of almost 22% can be envisaged, where there is unforeseen situation of 1 degree Celsius increase in the temperature of the entire environment where agriculture is practiced. And therefore, it is just one example. Next slide, please. How the contribution of 1 degree Celsius enhancement in the open areas, the agricultural fields, can contribute to the loss of agricultural production. And these are some of the things which cannot be seen by your eyes. You have to only be ready for combating such scenarios. And the earlier example of integrated intensive farming system that I was giving, it was also because the land races or the traditional varieties of crops had that ability to adapt to the changes of environmental level as well as the drastic changes at microclimatic level, even if they occur at a very short notice. These crops, the traditional crops, had capacity to overcome these problems. And therefore, what we call it as anticipatory research is a solution for the future. We had started the research on identification of candidate genes for use in the development of transgenic plants, where mangroves, a unique ecosystem, was studied, and we were in a position to look at extraction of candidate genes which were transferred into the local rice varieties, and the rice was made salt tolerant. Another way of involving communities in looking at the situation of climate change was training the local communities that we did in the 300 villages of Tamil Nadu and also Andhra Pradesh, where at the time of hitting of tsunami, few years before it hit the eastern coast of India, these young leaders, the environmental leaders, were able to interpret the satellite data as can be seen in this particular slide. And they were able to announce on the loudspeakers that the fishermen from those villages should not go for fishing that particular day because the changes in climate are unforeseen and there is something different going to happen. And sure enough, the fishermen from these 300 villages did not go for fishing that day when tsunami hit the east coast of India, and hundreds or thousands of lives were saved because of this particular anticipatory activity that we had started at MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Also, the bioshields or the plantations of mangroves on large scale in these 50,000 hectares in the areas where the tsunami hit, the coastal stretches of eastern coast of India, the loss of lives and also loss of property can be prevented because of this anticipatory research and involvement of people for securing their livelihoods. Next slide, please. In this way, I have tried to give you a highlight as to how the transformation can take place if you are looking at agriculture, environment, and climate change. And there is a transformation agenda or Parivartan agenda that I call it, where we'll have to look at the economic conditions, we'll have to look at physical conditions, we'll have to look at cultural conditions of the communities, the area in which you are conducting research, you'll have to look at the socio-spiritual conditions of the area, you'll have to look at the environmental conditions, as well as you'll have to look at the intellectual conditions or the scientific knowledge that is available that can be blended with the traditional knowledge and that can lead to providing solutions of different types, particularly the climate change scenario. And therefore, I would like to conclude with my last slide, which I would like to show now. May I have the last slide, please? Where I'm trying to highlight the statement made by Dr. M.S. Swaminathan as early as in 2011, where the world was talking about only GDP and how the gross development product of any nation can make it economically stronger. But what was more important, probably even at that time, was looking at the happiness on the faces of the last segment of society, the last man, which is probably below the poverty line, and whether we can make him happy by providing him livelihood security by scientific interventions. And therefore, at that particular time, there was no matrix designed or no formula designed to count happiness of a nation. Dr. Swaminathan had mentioned, and I quote, that even if we can't quantify happiness as precisely as we currently quantify GDP, perhaps it is better to be vaguely right than precisely wrong. And this is a statement of a visionary scientist. He always believed in providing directions to the world by starting anticipatory research. And today, India is providing leadership in different fields, not only in science and technology, but also in the current COVID-19 situation, how the country of the magnitude of 1.6 billion population, 1.3 billion population, can contribute to minimizing the impact of the pandemic like COVID-19, and how our scientists and academicians can play a very important role by dissemination of knowledge and by developing themselves in the learning process of involving the young generation of our nation in educational activities and provide a bright future not only to our nation, but also the leadership to the entire world. With these words, I would like to particularly thank Dr. Muthuchelian for giving me this opportunity, for suggesting my name to this famous Nadar College, which invited me to inaugurate this seminar or the faculty development program by my inaugural address. I thank you one and all. I thank you, Principal Sir, for your leadership to this great institution and also the management committee of the college. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. We are very proud of having such a superb inaugural address from you, sir.
Thank you so much, madam.
Think big, keep going, and everything you need will come to you at the perfect time. It's my honor to welcome Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian, sir, who is a world-renowned biology scientist and currently Pro-Vice Chancellor of Dayananda Sagar University, Bangalore. He is the first Vice Chancellor of Periyar University in Tamil Nadu. He has been awarded with the prestigious Doctor of Science, Fellow of International Energy Foundation, Fellow of National Academy of Biological Sciences, Fellow of Paleobotanical Society, and Fellow of Zoological Society of India. Dr. Muthuchelian, sir, worked as a professor, head, and chairperson of the School of Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources in Madurai Kamaraj University. He had worked with various international prestigious scientific organizations such as IUCN, ICGP, the New York Academy of Sciences, USA. Dr. Muthuchelian, sir, has been serving as a chairman of the P team of NAC in many premier academic institutions in all over the country. For his immense research contributions, he had received many prestigious awards such as Lifetime Achievement Award in Environmental Sciences in New Delhi 2013. Let me cordially invite such an eminent professor, Dr. K. Muthuchelian, sir, to deliver the presidential address. Sir, please.
Thank you, madam, for your brief introduction. So good afternoon to everyone here. Most revered Professor Dr. Sanjay Deshmukh, former Vice Chancellor of the great Mumbai University and formerly an eminent scientist, worked in the Professor M.S. Swaminathan Research Foundation, and currently again is leading the Mumbai University in the biological division as professor, and who contributed a lot to the development of the agriculture, mangroves, and then the poverty alleviation, and then also to a greater extent in the food security. So hearty welcome to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
And then to my special appreciation goes to my good friend Dr. Sundrabandian, who is heading the College of BHNS Virudhunagar. My good friend Dr. Arumugam, the Dean of the Horticultural College, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Periyakulam. Dr. Avinash Nagpal from Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, Punjab. And then the illustrious guests from all over the country, including a scientist from Greece, Dr. Harold, and then Dr. Barbie from Mumbai, and then the other colleagues of the technical team, Dr. Pandirajan, Dr. Brem Shankar, Dr. Marishwari, under the dynamic leadership of the Dean, Dr. Jayakumaran, and distinguished the delegates, participants. Good afternoon to everyone here. At the outset, I would like to thank the principal for giving me this opportunity to chair this session, and then also to offer my felicitation for the President's address in the important the FDP program on the agriculture, environment, and climate change. So the impacts of the climate change are reducing the capacity of our natural resources, as mentioned by our chief guest today, biodiversity, soil, and water, which all together sustain the food demand of the world's increasing population. So food security and climate change are therefore interlinked, the challenges that need to be addressed simultaneously. So here, the increasing resource efficiency in agriculture and the building the resilience to the climate risk are the key accents for undertaking these challenges. So this means it implies a significant transformation of agriculture and food systems with the, I can say that it's a significant, in the concerted action and coordinated involvement of all the stakeholders on along the term perspective. So agriculture, food security, and climate change, which includes the environment, is composed of the three main pillars. Number one, sustainably increasing agriculture productivity and incomes. And number two, adapting and building the resilience of to the climate changes. Number three is reducing and or improving the greenhouse gases emissions where possible. More specifically, we aims to achieve the food security, climate change, adoption, and then adaptation, then mitigation, which all provide a means to help the stakeholders to local to national and then finally to the international levels identify the agriculture strategies suitable to their local conditions, taking into consideration of the social, economic, and environmental context where it will be applied. So here, the different elements which can be integrated into climate smart agricultural approach includes number one, the management of farms. With less while increasing the resilience of the ecosystem and the landscape management altogether conserve the ecosystem services, which will be considered as a key to increase our resource efficiency and the resilience. So service for the farmers and land managers to create an environment conducive to the implementation of the necessary changes here. So when talk about the climate refers to a long-term variation in the atmospheric condition because of the anthropogenic activities of either the region or the regions. And climate means a gradual change in the climate system, both by natural and the man-made causes. So here, the climate change is caused by the change in which the component of the climate system, such as atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, cryosphere, and lithosphere, are by the complicated interactions among those components. So these causes of the climate change are largely divided into the natural causes and the artificial causes. So here the natural causes, which include the change in the solar activity, the volcanic eruption, seawater temperature, ice cap distribution, and then westerly waves, and on the other atmospheric waves. So on the other hand, the artificial causes, which includes the carbon dioxide emission. So which is the main culprit of the everyone from the industry and agriculture production activities, which includes also the deforestation, acid rain, and the destruction of the ozone layer, the global warming by the increase of the greenhouse gases, and so on. So we have been talking a lot about all these changes. So the global greenhouse gas concentration based on the carbon dioxide is estimated to be increased from 280 ppm of what they have the optimum level in the early of the 1940s and 50s, and before the what they call the industrial revolution. Now it has been increased to around 400 ppm in the 2019 onwards. So according to the analysis, the average temperature of the earth also increasing every year, and which has been pointed out by the speakers. So I think we have specifically the global warming. The global warming was significantly accelerated since 1980, and the average temperature of 1998 was soared to 0.58 degrees Celsius, higher than the average temperatures in 1960 to 1990, which was the initial period of the world. So what we have been focusing with relevant to the climate change is agriculture production. So the agriculture production is carried out through the selection of the crops suitable to the climate of a specific region and application of the what you mean as a proper farming method or methodologies. Therefore, agriculture is a climate-dependent bio-industry with notable regional characteristics. So here, the regional characteristics refer to the ecosystem characteristics determined by the climate of the region. So altogether, the climate change, disrupts the agricultural ecosystem, resulting in change in the agricultural climatic elements such as temperature, precipitation, sunlight, while further increasing the arable, livestock, and hydrology sectors too. So first of all, the impacts of the climate change on the arable and livestock sector are made known by biological changes, and which including the change of the flowering, which mentioned by our honorable the speaker today, the chief guest, and harvesting season, the quality in terms of the change, and shift the area suitable for the cultivation. So everything has been changed, particularly in the livestock sector. The climate change brings about the biological changes. The biological changes in areas such as fertilization and breeding, and also affect the growing pattern of the pastures. So climate change affects the hydrology, including the underground water level, water temperature, river flow, water quality, lakes and marshes, by impacting precipitation, evaporation, evapotranspiration, and moisture content of the plant, and then also the entire agriculture ecosystem. So in particular, the increase of the precipitation by climate change leads to an increase of the outflow, while the temperature rise increases the evaporation, which results in the reduction of the outflow in terms of the unit productivity from the agriculture land. So altogether, the agroecological zone analysis is carried out by using the crop simulation model, we call it the crop model or short, that tracks the changes in the agriculture production and agroecological zones that have resulted from the climate change. So altogether, the crop growth is determined by the combined action of the three elements. I think those being the the genetic characteristics of the crop, cultivation technology, and the environment. So at the outset, I think this is the appropriate forum here. I think the organizers has chosen the right topic to, to integrate the agriculture, the environment, and climate change all together, and they wanted to make a solution. And then also this will be a good awareness to all the participants of our Indian subcontinent, and to know about the what scenario which needs for current world. So in summary, the impacts of the climate change on the agriculture sector have ambivalent characteristics of positive impacts creating opportunities and of negative impacts with cost. So therefore, it is very important to formulate adaptation strategies and adoption strategies that can maximize the opportunities and minimize the cost that will lead to the sustainable agricultural development. So with this, the conclusion, I would like to thank the organizers for providing me this opportunity to preside over this function and share some of the aspects related to the environment, agriculture, and with the changes in the climate, the technology now. So with this, I conclude everyone. I thank you everyone for the patient hearing. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful and brief speech about environment and climate exchange. Thanksgiving is always encouraged by our tradition. I would like to welcome Dr. S. Muthulakshmi ma'am, Assistant Professor in Commerce of VHNSN College, who is having best academic record and get deep insights in any programs and events. She has received Best Women Assistant Professor Award from Pearl Foundation, and she is the former NSS Programmer Officer of our college. She is a member in various committees in our college. Her area of specialization are HRM and marketing. She received minor projects funding from UGC and conducted several training programs and conferences. Let me invite such a wonderful personality, Dr. S. Muthulakshmi ma'am, to propose vote of thanks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, ma'am. I feel immensely happy to thank each and every one extremely with gratitude. I bow my head to the Almighty for leading us this gracious day. We are proud to host this important webinar in the current scenario on agriculture, environment, and climate change. Thanks to jointly collaborate with Pearl Foundation, a foundation for education excellence, Bangalore. It is my pleasure in thanking our beloved principal, Dr. P. Sundarabandyan, and organizing secretary, VHNSN College Autonomous, Virudhunagar, who is the backbone of all such webinars, for welcoming the gathering. At the outset, I thank Professor Dr. Sanjay Deshmukh, former Vice Chancellor, Mumbai University, formerly eminent scientist, Professor M.S. Swaminathan Research Foundation, Chennai, and Professor of Life Sciences, Mumbai University, Mumbai, who have consented to deliver the inaugural lecture. Sir has clearly pointed out environment and human development, sustainability in family planning, agricultural and rural development, climate change. And the words was wonderful given by M.S. Swaminathan. Even if we can't quantify happiness and precisely, as we currently quantify the GDP, perhaps it is better to be vaguely right than precisely wrong. Thank you, sir. I deem it a privilege in thanking Dr. K. Muthuchelyan, former Vice Chancellor, Periyar University, Salem, Tamil Nadu, and Pro Vice Chancellor, Dayananda Sagar University, Bangalore, for showing his cooperation in jointly organizing with us and being a part of us and delivering the presidential address. Sir, we would sincerely thank you for the wholeheartedly jointly collaborating with our college in conduct of many successful webinars. I would like to thank the learned and the intellectual resource persons, Professor Dr. Chi Armugham, Dean Horticulture College and Research Institute, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Periykulam, Tamil Nadu, Professor Avinash Kaur Nagpal, Department of Botanical and Environmental Sciences, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, Dr. Geeta, Director, Center for Plant Breeding and Genetics, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, Professor Dr. Adesh Pal, Director, UGC Human Resource Development Center, HRDC, Project Coordinator, Government of India, and Professor of Botanical and Environmental Sciences, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, Dr. S. Mohan Kumar, Director, Center for Biotechnology and Molecular Biology, Tamil Nadu, Agriculture University, Coimbatore, Dr. Manula Gadori, Department of Biochemistry, University College of Science, Usmania University, Hyderabad, Telangana, Dr. K.T. Parthiban, Dean, Forestry College and Research Institute, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Mechupalayam, Tamil Nadu. Professor Dr. S. Ravichandran, former Professor, Center for Water Resources, Anna University, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Professor Dr. K. Muthushalyan, former Vice Chancellor, Periyar University, Salem, Tamil Nadu, Pro Vice Chancellor, Dayananda Southern University, Bangalore. And Dr. Geeta Lakshmi, Director, Soil and Crop Management Studies, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Coimbatore, who have given their valuable time to present on the various topics relating to agriculture, environment, and climate change. I thank the coordinators, Dr. N. Jaykumaran, Dean Research, Mrs. Uma Sundari, Secretary, World Foundation, for the 5-day faculty development program on agriculture, environment, and climate change. My pleasant thanks to all my dear organizing committee members, Dr. J. Pandyarajan, Assistant Professor of Physics, Dr. B. Lawrence, Assistant Professor of Physics, Dr. P. Periyakarapaya, Assistant Professor of Botany, Dr. V. Shiva, Assistant Professor of Microbiology, and Mr. R. Prem Shankar, Assistant Professor of Computer Application, Mrs. Marishwari, Assistant Professor of Computer Application, and Mr. S. Selvanathan, Head and Assistant Professor of Commerce. Once again, I thank all the participants for being with us for the successful conduct of this 5-day faculty development program on agriculture, environment, and climate change. Best wishes and thank you.